Could you give parents some advice with regard to, you know, how you deal with a child's first words?
I think it's more a case of, we're going to take it even further back, when you actually say about communication starts from birth, because that's when everything happens, something called motherese, where you're literally turn-taking with your baby. You might be blowing bubbles, they might be making little sounds as they get a little bit older, but constantly supporting that by sort of waiting and allowing them to have time to make those sounds. Some people think that you just, by bombarding your child with information and constantly talking at them, that will make language develop. But actually, that's possibly as bad as not enough stimulation. You've got to, it's a two-way process. It's a real turn-taking, two-way process of turn-taking. So saying something, waiting and allowing some kind of response, be it non-verbal or verbal. And that's how conversational skills go on to develop as well. There's so many different top tips about language development. I think, you know, pass to Lisa, she can start us off.
I mean, I think the turn-taking can really start from almost birth, and it'll be something as simple as your baby will focus on your face and make a sound. And you make it back, and then you get a reaction, and that's turn-taking at its very earliest stage. And it might be not a noise that your baby's meant to make intentionally, it's just a noise that's happened, but they very quickly get the idea of turn-taking, which forms the basis of conversation.
I think I've actually done that with my child without realising.
It comes quite naturally to some people, and others find it really hard, and I think this is why we're seeing now, and again, research supports this, there are so many, and particularly, you know, young single mums actually who perhaps haven't had the parenting skills for themselves and therefore need help in actually developing that themselves with their own children. And they want to, but they kind of don't know how. So it isn't a natural thing for all people. So, you know, it's something that we sort of think, you know, it's so important just to allow children to have that time to be able to respond back to you. You know, and when they say their first words, you don't necessarily sound like the real word. It might be B for ball, for bath, even for biscuit. But as parents know their children so well, they can start to recognise these first words because it's in context, and they may not have the sounds to support what the language is for these children. They may not actually be able to say it, but that's their word, and language is developing, and language is developing well. So, and then we start moving on to that two-word stage, and again, sometimes you can't always tell. Strangers may not be able to tell what that child's saying, but parents can pick up on that. They know what's happening there as well. So fascinating watching language develop, yeah. I think in the early years, I think certainly it's really important because, you know, if we look at the talking as the icing on the cake or the roof of a house, the real foundation skills are all those things going on underneath. The child has to develop really good listening and attention skills. They have to develop the turn-taking skills. They need to develop that understanding of language as well. All of those things come into play. So it's all about inputting, but allowing time for them to give that output. And when they're ready, you know, unless it's going to prove to be a problem in the future, generally if they're ready, they will go on, and if it's all going well for them, you'll start to hear those words come out. And sometimes parents will go, oh, goodness me, he seems so quiet and now he never stops talking, which is lovely, which is really lovely to hear. Obviously there's a percentage of children who do have difficulties, and that's why we have speech and language therapists, you know, to help with that as well.
And as a parent, I think it's important that you shape and help develop your children's language. So from those very early words like rough for ball, you echo it back to your child straight away. Ball, well done, yes, it's a ball. And so you're giving them that reinforcement and that turn-taking to reinforce that word for them.
So they're getting what we tend to say, a good model approach. They're hearing the right word, but they're not being made to say it, you know, or being corrected, because then children feel as if they're failing. So it's sort of, they'll have a go, they've got language, and they go, well, and the parents go, no, 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 it's a ball, say ball. And that's not kind of what it's about, language. It will develop and it will happen. So it's, oh, yes, I can see that ball too. So we shape it, we start to shape it, and as they start to put, say, two words together next, again, we can make it a bit longer by echoing it back, not by going, ah, yes, such and such, and doing a great long sentence. So, you know, again, we have to think about the length of sentences we use and how much information we use in a sentence to small children. So we need to make sure it's shorter and simpler. And then, you know, they can understand that, it gives them an opportunity to get those short, simple sentences, and we can move it up a level.
And I think the key is, as you said before, is pause, allow time for your child to respond back to you, get down on their level, get face to face, and just have some really good quality one-on-one time.
Obviously there are norms, we have to have norms. It's like with walking, you know, sort of say between 12 and 18 months. But it's really difficult because you could have a child referred to as a speech and language therapist, you could have a child referred at 2 because they're not saying very much. But you could get 2 children of 2 and one of them, everything's in place, listening and attention, the understanding, we can assess all of that. Everything's in place to have this explosion of language, and he's just kind of one of those, he's going to get going. But you can have a 2-year-old, he's all over the place, she's all over the place. You know, listening attention is poor, eye contact is poor, turn taking is poor. All the other skills aren't ready. So you suspect with all of that, once you've assessed that, you think, this is the child I need to keep an eye on, do watchful, really watchful, waiting, monitoring, and this is the child that we think is going to be fine. And kind of off you go with lots of advice about helping language develop, and I think we'll see in sort of 6 months and we think things will probably be fine. So it's really hard to say, oh yes, by such an age they should be having this many words by such an age, because there's so much going on underneath the language, you know, underneath speech, isn't there, underneath words.
It's a really, really general guide. At 12 months you're looking at single words, lots of single words. At 2 years you're looking at beginning to get little 2-word sentences.
Yeah, but you can have plenty.
Really generally.
Yeah, but you can have plenty of children who just really get going at 2 and then they're off. Each case is so different, it's really hard to tell. So, yeah. Developmental norms, they're difficult, they need to be there. They need to be there because obviously it's the health visitors and GPs and everyone else who might have contact with the child, but they're also so worrying for parents when they open a book or they look on a website and go, by such and such an age, your child should be doing this. Everyone's sort of going, oh no, I should have 50 words, my child, and they've only got 25 or 49, and you know, and it is, and as a parent, it's a very emotive thing, you know, you are very emotional about your children, so it is hard, but then we always say if there are concerns, you know, make sure you do speak to health visitors, then maybe have a referral to a speech and language therapist, if only for reassurance.
Yeah, in the majority of cases, elder siblings don't interfere with the younger siblings' language development, but it can have a delayed effect, particularly if they're close in age, because the older sibling does tend to do a lot of the talking, and so the younger sibling can sit back a little bit. But the key is that the younger sibling is still understanding everything. The expressive language, the words putting together in sentences is the icing on the cake. They're little sponges at that age. So long as they're soaking everything in, then it's not a concern generally.
Books is a really great thing. You know, children absolutely adore sitting, looking at books with you, to the point where you might read the same story 20 times in one day and you just think, I can't read this again, and they appear with it again. But it's the structure and that repetition of the books that they like, and they can anticipate what's happening next. And it's a great thing to help language, because as they get used to it, they can literally sometimes come in with the last word, you know, so you say, you know, whatever it might be, you know, it might be, where's Spot, is he in there? And they've heard it 1,000 times before, and you might, if you have a nice big pause, you might just get clock, or whatever it might be, you know, whatever the word is, and it's like, wow. So, you know, books are a great thing, and it's a great one for sharing together as a parent. So that's certainly one thing I would say.
And talk to your child, talk to your baby. You know, from very tiny age, when you're out pushing the pram, give a voiceover of, you know, oh, look at the birds, look at the trees, allowing time to pause so your child can do the turn taking that we talked about earlier, but just talk to your child, try and get some quality time with the TV off, one-on-one, get down to your child's level and just play.
Wonderful. Really plans to write a book?